The thing that connected with me is the description on the timeline of us buying our house and the amount of money that it had gone up in value was exactly correlated to the stimulus packages of COVID. So like the price increasing like perfectly matched inflation. That for me was just light bulb. And I had already been thinking about all these ideas, but my wife always has a comment that it's just like, none of it's real. None of the money's real. None of this is real. Like it's always been her belief. It's like, this is all made up. This is real. This is pre-Bitcoin. She just would always say these words, you know? And so when my brother said that to me, and I'm like, yeah, my house isn't worth more. It's just, there's more money in there.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Sports Network podcast, where we blend excitement with competition to create unforgettable experiences. Our mission is to empower Bitcoin one competition at a time and help orange pill the world.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Sports Network podcast. I'm your host, Chris. I have a very special guest with me here today. He's a husband, he's a father, he's a pro golfer, and he's also a Bitcoiner. Case Cochran, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Great. I'm so happy I could have you on the show here today. We met in kind of an interesting way. I'm putting together these golf tournaments, and out of the blue, I get this email from Casey, and he says, hey, I'm living in an area where you're doing a tournament, and I'd like to play in it. I can do whatever you want. I can help. I can go for. I can hit the long drive. I can hit, approach shots. You just tell me what to do, and I want to play in your tournament. And I was like, oh, this guy's got a lot of passion. I got to meet him. So we set up a call, and one thing led to another, and now I got Casey on the podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about life, Bitcoin, professional golf, coming from a professional golfing family, and a whole lot more. So sit back, relax. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Casey, let's start from the beginning. You went to Texas A&M University. Is that where your passion for golf really flourished? Or take us back. When did you know that you wanted to follow in the family's footsteps and take golf professional?
Well, yeah, it definitely goes back further than that. First, Chris, I have to say, it's my alter ego, Casey, but I just go by Case.
Okay.
Which is my wife and my wife's name is Ashton, and she goes by, everyone calls her Ashley half the time. So we always have that fun joke. I started my golf journey just as soon as I could think and have memories. Because my dad being a professional golfer, it was just always around the house. We had a sunroom with plastic toys and balls. And, but I would say that I got hooked when I was 8, 9, 10. It would be, I could walk to the golf course in town. I could swim in the pool and take my putter. And when I got tired of swimming, I'd go to the putting green. And so there's stories of me doing putting contests against the assistant pros and the pros. Like if it was a slow day, they'd come out of the office, the pro shop, and they'd putt against me. We'd putt for golf balls or candy bars. And there'd be great stories. My dad would be at a restaurant in town, and he'd come up to him and say, their pro would see him and come up and say, I'm embarrassed to say your son beat me in a putting contest. He said, yeah, Ryan's 16. He's a pretty good player himself. And he's like, no, your younger son, Case. And so I always attached, I had this place in the world in golf. I was always able to be myself, and it just grew from there. From that age of 10, I started playing in tournaments. I would play up ages. And then I got to where I was one of the better players in Kentucky. And then I won the state tournament, and I got recruited down to Texas A&M. And that's kind of where my whole Texas life has begun. But that's kind of where golf all started for me.
Wow. So was it something that you and your brothers did competitively around the house, or how did it foster? You went one direction, and you have two brothers, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're saying,
brothers.
Yeah. And they're both in the golf industry as well.
Yes.
Yeah. But you guys are doing different stuff.
Yeah. And so both my oldest brother played at the University of Florida golf. And then my other brother was more of a baseball player, but still loved golf, especially in college. He just wasn't wasn't competitive in it. And then he is the middle brother is still caddying on the PGA Tour, and my oldest brother caddied for a few years, but now he is off grid doing his own. Doesn't have to be traveling as much. It really wore him out. So he's happy now.
That leads me to a good question. What is the life for a retired professional PGA caddy?
Well, I guess that. Well, it just kind of depends. For most everyone, it's finding a new passion, finding a new job. It's just like any other job, and I think for most people, it's just the travel that gets to them.
Is there usually a pretty good nest egg saved up by the time? I'm not talking about necessarily about your brothers, but I'm just saying you must have a general sense in the pro industry for the caddies. Like,
as you can see, it's not like there's any kind of mystery here. That since the Tiger Woods era and all the money came into golf, it used to be the golfers were the one that made the money, and then you'd have a caddy that would either travel with you, but the money wasn't there, so you didn't have as many. It just wasn't as a long term. It was for some guys, but it wasn't like a long term like go get it profession. And then when this money came in, where you have trainers and caddies and the whole entourage can make money, it's more of a my family's going to be in golf any way they can, and so they've kind of latched onto that profession of it.
Cool. So when did Bitcoin come into the conversation?
My brother, and I talked with him a little bit. He's okay with me kind of sharing some of it. He was kind of going through what I would just call a life transformation. He realized as he was getting older, he was traveling and caddying, and he didn't necessarily like the trajectory that he was going in. And so he went out to Hawaii, and he'd always been a reader and just an absorber of just knowledge. And he wanted, from philosophy books to finance to everything. And he was the one that began as he was in this clear thinking state by himself. And he really describes it as like, he just kept getting hit with the truth, like Bitcoin exposes the truth. And everyone kind of talks about that now as it's kind of like a truth pill, or you just can't hide things when it comes to Bitcoin. And he used it as part of his whole ethos and changing his life. And it's been really inspiring. So I've been close with him in those those conversations with him where he would bring it up. And then on my own, I got a few books from the library, Bitcoin Standard, but I also like to read fiction. So I'm or not fiction, but more fun books. So I'm reading Bitcoin Billionaires, about the Winklevosses and like the early steps of everything. And it's definitely a younger story than yours. I know you've had a lot of years interested in it, but since last year, and I can't get enough of it kind of thing.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. There's a saying in Bitcoin, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you.
Yep.
And when you see that change in other people, it almost becomes like infectious, where you're just like, why are they so happy now? Like, why don't they care about this? Don't they care about inflation? Don't they care about, not being able to purchase a home? And like Bitcoiner just sit there and goes, nope, because that's only 4%. That's only 4 to 10% per year. And Bitcoin's accumulating at 60%, compounded growth year over year. It's like, I just need to get rid of more cash and save in more Bitcoin.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to say something that was really important to me when I started to think about Bitcoin. Was also a time where I got diagnosed with celiac disease. And so
now, as a non-doctor here, what is celiac disease? Sorry.
So celiac is no bread, no gluten.
Oh, okay.
And it's not gluten intolerance. It's the disease where like I did a endoscopy. So the camera, I've got just blood and like destruction all down my stomach lining and esophagus. And you're like, all you have to do is not eat gluten. And so it's an easy fix, but it does like, kind of like, oh man, I have like a disease that I need to pay attention to. got 3 kids and I need to, get this all in order. And my wife and I are focusing a lot on, in our spare time, we're doing a lot in health and longevity and just you get excited, when you have kids. I know you have 2, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So you just get excited with your family and like, my grandmother's 90, like I want to live to 90 and do all that. Like, how am I healthy? And then I was diagnosed with celiac and it was a focus on our food. And then you get down these rabbit holes in health. And then it started happening with money, with Bitcoin. And then it starts to happen.
It's a conspiracy, Casey.
We
don't know what we're talking about.
And so
we
it's
have
not
to listen to the overlords that tell us what we need to hear. The MSNBCs of the world. We have to listen to them.
I know. And you start to think about what's good for you, and you start to realize, and I think it's a generational thing. I think it's the amount of information that's out there. You would agree, where if you start finding what's best for you, you start coming to truths. And that's what Bitcoin was for me. Like immediately and then it's just like, how much can you learn about it? And then the more you learn, the more you trust. And that's how it goes. I know you know that.
Yeah. On the food issue, on the gluten thing, I try not to eat any bread. My wife makes sourdough bread and it's super delicious. And she used to sell it to the Bitcoin community and it was amazing, but it's sourdough. So it takes like 72 hours to make a single loaf of bread. But yeah, when you go to the grocery store and you try to buy something without gluten in it, it's almost impossible. Yep. It's like you end up eating butter and meat all day long because there's nothing else out there. Everything's got processed something in it.
So my wife and I have gone, we got the book Good Energy by Casey Means. And it's like you can't do everything that she's proposing, but this idea of like 80% of what we eat, especially in our routine thing, can be just whole foods and be non-processed and take all the sugar out. And you feel better, and you all of a sudden, instead of wanting to watch TV, you're wanting to, for me, read more books on Bitcoin and figure things out, right?
Yeah, I was listening to this interview with these 2 doctors on it's like this carnivore podcast, and one of the guys asked the other guy, he said, do you know what the daily nutritional allowance for carbohydrates is in a person's diet? It's 0. It's 0. Yeah. Like a person can live without carbs at all. We don't even need to eat wheat if we don't have to.
Yeah, you just switch. I mean, I've done fasting and done keto and done all kinds of things, but it was just a lot easier especially without the bread and the gluten. It's just like, I'm just going to eat some really simple foods and not have to think about it anymore. It's been nice.
Absolutely. So, hey, go ahead. I was saying, let me get back to a question about the orange pill moment between your brother and yourself, when you were finally like, oh, okay, maybe I'll take a second look in this and kind of figure this out. First of all, I guess 2 questions. What did he say that connected with you? And then the second thing is, when you asked the next question after that, what was the expression on his face?
The thing that connected with me is, I can't remember the words, but it was the description on the timeline of us buying our house and the amount of money that it had gone up in value was exactly correlated to the stimulus packages of COVID. So like the price increasing like perfectly matched inflation. And it was just like, that for me was just light bulb. And I had already been thinking about all these ideas, and my wife always has a comment that it's just like, none of it's real. Like none of the money's real. None of this is real. Like all the finances, it's always been her belief. It's like, this is all made up. This is real. This is pre-Bitcoin. She just would always say these words, And so when my brother said that to me, I'm like, yeah, my house isn't worth more. It's just, there's more money in there. And so then when I basically just asked him like, so how do you self-custody? Because at that point I had already been trying to, acquire Bitcoin and figure things out. And I had notes that I written down where back when I was gambling, playing golf, I had that when Venmo started offering that you could buy it through Venmo. So I had like, I would, win $100 on the golf course and just buy Bitcoin with it. 2021, 2022, I just like, but I didn't know anything about it. I was just like, oh, I'm winning golf money. I'm winning money on the course. I'm just going to do it. But when I was having those conversations, he would text me and it would just be like, I mean, scrollers. You could just, and he's just explaining all these different, macro points and points about money. And I'm also reading books. But I think what I was excited to even talk to you in person is just like when you talk to someone in person about it, you can see it in their eyes. You can go in a different direction, and next thing you know, you're still talking about Bitcoin, even though you're like way over here. And that's all exciting for me. I mean, that's just I love to talk to people and figure all that out. And he was
my parents won't let me talk to them anymore.
Really?
Yeah, because every conversation I have, it always comes back to fix the money, fix the world, right? So
yeah.
When they talk to me about expenses or medication or any of that kind of stuff, I'm just like, all right, have you thought about Bitcoin? Oh, I don't have any money for that. It's like, okay, well, what about
sorry, go ahead.
No. It's just then it gets into the whole financial conversation with their stockbroker who, isn't a family member, who doesn't have 8 years of Bitcoin, 75,000 hours of knowledge in it. And it's like, well, what do you think? And they say, well, there are some pretty attractive, high yielding municipal bonds that I should be putting my money into right now. Okay.
Yeah. That was a good argument. My brother, what kept hitting on the family was just like, just even if you just take your bonds and put it in Bitcoin, you can do whatever else you want. But he just had a very well thought out, like his own white paper on, bonds are trash. Just go to the, so that was, it made Christmas this year pretty interesting for everybody. Pretty fun to talk about.
So I want to go back to something that you said there, because for a short period of time, I wanted to see how good I could get at golf. And so I had taken a year off of work and I practiced every day, and I went on the golf course and played, and I got myself into some cash games and doing that kind of thing. And you mentioned something similar to that, saying that whenever you would be out on the course playing or gambling or something like that, if you win $100, you'd put it in Bitcoin. Is that fairly regular for professional golfers? Like, do you have like weekly scratch game or games where you hustle people, or
so you're definitely not hustling.
You're
it's
hustling,
definitely
you guys
built. Yeah. It's definitely
get
built.
me wrapped up in a $5 game that turns into $20. Next thing I know, you're birdie.
Yeah, no, I do that to you for sure. If you came to Dallas, we'll set up some nice games there. So you have the mini tours all around the country. They're regional, and guys that are trying to make it up in the tours, but those events are only so often. PGA Tour has an event every week, but if you're a younger guy or a guy starting out, you need somewhere to plan that, and my dad always talked about it, like you need putts to matter, you need tee shots to matter, you need your shots to matter. And if you don't have an amount of money on the line that makes you nervous, and like I can like make myself nervous like sitting here talking about it, like you can remember those situations that you've been in, and you're playing. There's a game called Wolf where, you get all of a sudden you're the lone wolf and you're playing against the 4 other guys. And so like there's 4 different bets that are all coming at you. If you don't, at least secure a par, and, if you got a chance at a birdie, you can really win some money. You can really lose if you screw up the hole. But in the end of the day, even if it's $5 against your friend that you play with every time, this was pre-Venmo, and there's still some Venmo, but most golfers carry cash, and the cash goes out of their pocket into your pocket. And that happens after the round, no matter what. And it's fast payment, fast friends. If they don't, like, you're not really going to play with that guy if he's like, oh, I owe you. And it's like, no, this is settled on the course or settled on the green after it's done. And that round and those shots then meant something. So like no matter what the dollar really is, but that meant something. And that's how you practice and prepare for Q school and for tournaments. That was Trevino's biggest thing. He was betting with money he didn't even have here in Dallas when he was starting.
Yeah, he was also putting Vaseline on the face of his club heads, cheating.
Oh yeah, he was doing all the tricks.
Not
for sure.
not cleaning his clubs or anything, so he could get more spin on the ball or less spin on the ball. He knew all the tricks.
Yeah, they've got all the stories. Titanic Thompson. There's some good historical golf. Texas has got all the good golf stories for sure. Yeah, so you just have to put yourself in a position to borrow from Bitcoin, prove yourself. Your proof of work is you can't. I've and I've been, if I look and be real honest with myself, I've been a victim of this plenty of times I've where you'll play with someone or yourself, and it was just a little bit too much, for giggles. Like you just weren't really playing seriously enough, or you're playing too fast, or and you get kind of in a groove and you shoot 63, and you shoot 60, you make 6 birdies in a row. Well, but you weren't playing for anything. Like the skills and the shots were there, but that whole extra side, they always say between the ears. I mean, that's the pressure. That's the moment that you have to work towards, that won't show up in the tournaments if you haven't practiced and put yourself in that position.
That's why I gave up on it. I'd be saying, okay, how much are we going to play for? $5 a hole. So that's, 5 times 18. That's this much money. I'm just going to give it to you now. All right. Cause I'm going to be really pissed at the end of the round if I have to give it to you then. So I'm just going to give it to you now. And then I'm going to hope I get some of it back at the end of the round.
Yeah, that's right.
That alleviates some of the pressure for me. But you coming from your dad was a professional golfer, Russ Cochran. He won 11 times total, 1 time on the PGA Tour, 5 times in the Champions Tour, and 5 other wins on other tour events. How was it growing up with your dad? Was traveling a lot? Were you guys traveling with them? Was he just kind of home on Monday, Tuesdays, or and what about that lifestyle made you and your brothers go, hey, I want to do this to my family too when I grow up?
Yeah. Well, we're from a great small town, Paducah, Kentucky, so not too far from Nashville. My sister lives in Nashville still, and we were able to travel with him as much as we could. And they kind of had this unspoken rule where he's never gone more than 3 weeks in a row. In a sense. So like if he was going to travel for more than 3 weeks, we would go see him in a middle week, or he would like sneak home for a Monday, Tuesday kind of deal. And then we also had a very special deal where he would fly us by ourselves to his tournament. One kid. So one kid got the time with dad by himself at the tournament. So like it made the memories of all of that much more positive than negative. I think if it was he's gone and there's no effort to go see him, and then he shows up every 6 weeks, I think my childhood would have had more of like a negative connotation on like my dad was always gone. But he was like, how can I involve them in this? He'd, bring us in to, we'd go sit with the families and do dining, and they'd have a daycare out there. And so you're really, you're part of this traveling circus and part of that enterprise, and it becomes fun. And then for me, I loved golf. And then I loved the relationships my dad had with the people that he would go out there with. I mean, it was different conversations, different groups of people from all over the country. And I just really attached to that, learning and growing. And he'd give me the map and tell me to book him rooms, tell me how to get there. If you save me, here's your budget. I'll give you 50% of the budget of what you save me, if you do my travel arrangements. I mean, so we're from a, middle schooler figuring out, calling hotels, calling Hampton Inns, or starting the early use of, Priceline and all that. I mean, that was super fun for me. I just always loved it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like there's some sort of support group on the PGA Tour that, incentivizes that type of family activity, which completely makes sense. I mean, there would have to be
for sure. And that is totally speaking from the 1980s to 2000, 2005 realm, where, there's definitely more money in it now. And we've been out of that system as, we weren't in the current system as it is now, but it was definitely, I know my dad has stories when in the 70s and or late 70s, early 80s, where they're just like they get like a binder of information on their tournaments, and he's just like driving blind into a city and like trying to figure out where to go and where to stay. And just totally different than it is now, for
Yeah,
sure.
every now and again I daydream and I think what it was like to have to find a place with Thomas Guide,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
was a map book for people who are younger. It was just a big book, and it was just full of maps of every city, and you'd have to figure out what city and street you were going to, and then figure out what page it's on, and then column and row, and then look at it. Was a terrible thing. I remember I was trying to become a caterer, driving catered food to places, and the interview was basically, can you find these 5 Thomas Map locations in like 20 minutes? Like, if you do it, you get the job. If you don't do it, you don't get the job. I did not get the job.
Yeah.
I was very happy when digital maps came out on my cell phone.
Yeah, I'm still the guy that looks at maps before he falls asleep. Like I'll zoom in on a city and just geek out until I fall asleep. I mean, I've just always loved it.
So when you were a kid growing up, going to these PGA Tour events with just your dad, did you ever try to hustle any out of the pros on the putting green to see if you could out putt them? Do they ever give you the time of day?
No, but they were some really nice guys to me out there. That my dad's left-handed, and both my brothers play golf left-handed, but I was the odd man out. I played right-handed. So I'd have to go, sneak over there to Kenny Perry's bag, and his caddy had caddied his, also from Paducah.
I played his golf course not too long ago. It's just a little bit north
Kenny,
of
oh
Nashville.
yeah.
Yeah.
I actually caddied a little bit for Kenny 2023 out on the Champions Tour, and so I would steal their putters, and I would have to steal their clubs to hit with, and I like sneak under the ropes and grab their stuff. And their caddy would hand me a couple balls, and I'd go putt on the corner. Or then when I was like in high school, I'd have tournaments coming up, and so I'd go. I remember I was walking the course, Western Open course, Cog Hill, where my dad won, and I'm in tennis shoes, and I'm caddying for my dad that day, practice round, and Jason Gore's like, "What are you doing out here? I want you to hit one." He hands me his driver, and I've got New Balances on, perfectly bent grass, and I slip, but I just crush one out there. And he's like, "That's what I came to see. What are you doing carrying the bag?" So like little things like that would be, great influences for me too.
That's a total tin cup moment. When
Yep.
he's caddying for that guy and he says, "Hey, I think he can hit it farther than you." Yeah, and they do the exact same thing.
Yep.
You got to live a tin cup. Did they get that from you? Did they writers?
No, I'm afraid not. I'm
in golf.
Yeah, I have played I did play Q school at the Tin Cup course down Deerwood in Houston. That one kicked my butt. That was a hard course.
Did you hit your best shot with a baseball bat or a shovel?
I would have they wouldn't have let me come back on that.
Well, cool. I don't have too many other directions to take this. I would be very interested to know though, when you're playing on the tournament events, I'm assuming there's not a lot of conversations between you and the other people that you're playing with. There's a lot of focus. Have you noticed any conversations about finances or Bitcoin, or do you know anybody who's a pro golfer who is also into Bitcoin? How do you see Bitcoin's growth in the professional ranks of at least golf over the next several years?
So I thought about this more in the sense of the people I know, and just being in the industry and being in golf so long, and kind of my journey with it. The risk tolerance for guys that play golf and try to make a living playing golf are so high anyway. And the understanding of finances and having to raise money, and you're basically an entrepreneur for yourself. You're doing your own business. And I think that really lends itself to conversations about Bitcoin. I mean, we always talked about money before, but this was, at the time, 2015 through 2019, we just weren't, Bitcoin wasn't on my group of players, my group of friends' radar. But we would go, so I played the Latin America Tour 2016 and 17. And that's tied directly to when I first started, or when I really started reading about Bitcoin, these thoughts of the Argentinian peso and my experiences with it, of like going down there in years and like in order to get pesos, or like it was all black market deals on the side of the street. Like that's how like the government encouraged you to get your money, because you could only get, you know, $50 worth a day out of the bank. And it was this really weird situation down there where like there were, you know, 30 things that were cost nothing in US dollars. And then there was thousands of things that were, you know, 50, 100% more expensive than they would be in the US, just because of basically the money is just all
Yeah, have you heard of the book by Alex Gladstein called oh boy, now that I said it, Check Your Financial Privilege?
Okay, no, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a really good book. It talks exactly about that and how countries use inflation in their currencies to basically strip the wealth from its citizens and foreigners who are coming in to visit. Because you'll have one exchange rate if you go to the airport and go to their exchange booth or go to a bank, but you'll have another which will be a lot lower. You'll get less of the peso or the other currency, or you go to the black market and then you get more of the world currency rate or something closer to that. There's not as big of a spread. And so what governments do is they basically take that extra amount that they're stripping off that they take, and then they, you know, buy US dollars, they do whatever, and then they finance their own lives. So it's just, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the traveling in Latin America, Central and South America, 14, 15 different countries. My wife and I actually took time off work. She caddied for me. So that's a whole nother set of stories that were so fun. And we had a great time going down there. But the experiences on all the cultures, all the money, was just really, I didn't know how much I learned about myself and about how the US has things privileged, but also how we don't think about some things as, you know, simply or relaxed as they do. It was just a really, you know, I think when you see, it helps you see things in a bigger picture, and anything that helps you do that helps you, I think helped me understand Bitcoin quicker. Yeah, so that was a really positive influence on me.
Have you thought about if like a pro golfer were to hold his wealth in Bitcoin versus all these different, because if you're playing in those Latin American tours or you're playing on the Asian tour, you're dealing with different currencies because the tournaments are in different countries, right? So how do you manage the currency risk, the taxation? When do payments come after you make them? Like, how does a pro golfer deal with all those different types of things? You just have a money manager and you just push it all over to them and they take care of it, or?
I mean, honestly, you just you put your head down and you play golf because you hope that your good enough golf gets you moved up to a stage where you're playing so much money that then you're paying for people to worry about it for you. It's so you're having to raise money to go down there on this Latin America tour in the first place. And so in those years that I'm playing, the goal is to break even. And so it's a really interesting mindset. You really are a startup company where you're looking for venture capitalists or you're looking for investments to say, hey, you know, I believe in this guy. Let's do this together. You know, let's do a partnership, or let's figure things out. And so your job, it really can't stray from the golf. I mean, I guess it could, but the guys that focus more on the golf and then worry about that later are just the guys that are having more success.
So would it be easier if, like, do you get paid right away on those tours, or do you have to wait like 30, 60, 90 days before they cut the check?
Yeah, you've got to, to that point, what you said, it's a disaster. I mean, you wait, well, you're still being paid through the tour. So it would be 2 weeks, but you don't know, there's no clear indication on how much the taxes will be. And you're paid in dollars, but then you have to pay the caddy and stuff in the local current. You know, there's just a lot of stuff that better money fixes.
I was going to say, it sounds like that's something that Bitcoin fixes.
Yeah.
Everybody just use Bitcoin. I mean,
right there.
Keep spreading the message.
Exactly.
Well, all right, Case. It's been great talking with you. Thanks for spending this half an hour with us. Is there any place people can follow you or find out more about what you're doing and when you're playing again?
No, I am I've been struggling with my back injury a little bit, and I've got a 14-month-old that keeps me pretty busy right now. So I've been giving lessons here in Dallas, and hope to get playing again soon. I'm not on social media. I like to keep it small, I guess. But you can if you could put my email address in the podcast notes, that'd be great.
Perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, and we hope to get you out to another one of our events. Our next event is going to be at the Bitcoin Conference in Las Vegas. It's the second annual Samara Bitcoin Golf Championship. Sponsorships and ticket sales are going fast. There's also going to be an after party that will allow more people than just the golfers to come out and play and practice and talk with professional. There's going to be some professional golfers there, but also some very influential OG Bitcoiners will be in attendance too. So hope to see everybody there.